Guys, welcome to something new. We're trying something a little different today just to test out the new live streaming capabilities here with lightstream.com. Since Google decided to drop Hangouts, we're going to try some live streaming here. And yeah, I brought the mask back because this is fun. We're trying. You can see this whole setup here. We've got the Nerd News Desk that we're going to be checking out here. And today we're going to be talking about some of the comics that are coming out this week. And one of the things I'm going to try to do with these live streams is if this works, if this setup, this whole go live stream stuff works, then we're going to try doing live streaming randomly, often, whenever there's something I want to talk about, something happens, movie news, toy news, comic books, whatever, then we'll pop in and we'll do one of these streams. So I'm hoping you guys are going to dig this, and I'm hoping all of this works. I'm hoping you can hear me fine. I'm trying an old microphone with the new setup. It's kind of crazy, but what we're going to be talking about today, comics coming out this week. And I did put some information there in the title. You probably saw it, so you know some of the things we're going to be talking about. But let's go ahead and take a look. We've got 2 Carnage books coming out this week, if you can believe it. We've got the Absolute Carnage Scream, and we've got the Absolute Carnage Separation Anxiety. Both of those coming out in the same day, which is great. Don't you love it when Marvel does that? When they're just like, hey, we're going to release some books and we're going to do them all on the exact same day. So those of you who are following the storyline and you've been picking up these books, be ready to buy 2 this week because you're going to have to keep up with the story. But nonetheless, for any of you who have been following this, just this Absolute Carnage takeover, Marvel is running this through a lot of different books. And those of you who've read Separation Anxiety, or you read the Maximum Carnage storyline from the 90s, this is tying into a lot of that kind of stuff. If you want to check out previews, we're not posting them anymore on ineedcomics.com, but you can go to previewsworld.com. You can find them there. Something else that's going on this week is Gwenpool Strikes Back, #1 of 5. Now, some of you may be wondering, why are we making a big deal out of Gwenpool? A lot of you don't like Gwenpool because she seems to be one of those characters that comes from the oversaturation of Deadpool, one of those spinoffs that doesn't really matter. But I was not really familiar with the character until my son brought Gwenpool to my attention, and she is a lot of fun when handled properly. In her own title, she had the ability to break the fourth wall, look at the comic page as artwork laid out on a page, and move through it, manipulate it, and do things that normally a comic character inside the comic can't do, because she has the ability to break that fourth wall. It's a lot of fun, like I said, when done very well. Now, she was in West Coast Avengers, and that book was terrible. Just straight up terrible from top to bottom. So if you haven't read it, don't. If you're a fan of the character, you don't need it. But this particular miniseries, where Gwenpool returns, it looks like part of her powers are at least coming back, or at least this writer understands how to make Gwenpool a lot of fun. So I'm actually looking forward to checking that one out a little more in depth. Powers of X, of course, is going to continue. For all of you that feel the need to follow this stuff, I'm not a big X-Men guy. I will admit that. I tried reading some of this stuff. I tried reading the House of X. This is actually Powers of 10, I guess. It's not Powers of X, but people call it Powers of X. It's like the 10th Friday the 13th movie. Is it Jason X or Jason 10? People go back and forth on it. I guess this is Powers of 10. Maybe it's House of 10, Powers of X. I don't know. But regardless, I'm not a fan of the way Jonathan Hickman does this, where he wastes pages with these logos, wastes pages with just text of background information on the islands and whatever. And the other thing that's weird to me is that the text that they use in the word balloons is actually the Ultimate Universe style of writing things, which makes me wonder if maybe this is an alternate timeline and they just haven't told anybody yet. Maybe there's some history changing going on here. I don't know. It's a little awkward. It's Hickman. It's mumbo jumbo. Some of you are going to dig it. A lot of people, apparently not huge fans. All right, now let's kick over to DC a little bit. This is what I'm looking forward to, Detective Comics 1009. And I got to say, when it comes to the Batman books, Detective Comics for me has become the Batman book. I'm sorry, but Tom King's work on the regular Batman title just doesn't cut it for me. This is the good stuff. This is Batman fighting villains. This is Batman being Batman, which is stuff I really enjoy. And so this is Deadshot leaving Suicide Squad, coming back to Gotham City. Batman doesn't trust him. And then we also have Mr. Freeze getting powers from Lex Luthor's Year of the Villain offer. Again, not huge on Year of the Villain, but I am digging what's going on in Detective recently. So looking forward to that issue. We also have Event Leviathan number 3. And so far, I'm a little unsold on Event Leviathan. It's one of these books where we've been given a villain, but we're not really sure of the character's motivations. So you're watching him do all this stuff, and you don't really know why or how, and you're not really sure that you care. They've also sent the heroes on an apparently wild goose chase running after Red Hood, who really doesn't seem to be involved, doesn't seem to be a part of this, unless the timing of all the DC books have been messed up. Maybe Doomsday Clock has just thrown everything out of whack with some of the stuff that's going on. But Red Hood is not Leviathan in the Red Hood comics, so I'm not sure why they're throwing this wild goose chase in the middle of this book, because it seems like you and I know better than that book, but that's what's going on. So that's the story that's happening in Event Leviathan. We've got the takedown of all the metahuman secret agent groups, and now some of the great heroes are going down. And another problem with this book is, of course, it's not running over into other titles. So it came out of the Superman books, but then it just kind of picks up a thread with Lois Lane and goes off on a tangent, and it doesn't really tie into Superman anymore, it doesn't seem like. And we've got a bunch of random characters involved, and again, I'm just not sure where this is going or why it's supposed to be important. It's one of those event books that doesn't really feel like an event, but nonetheless, there it is. We've got Flash. The end of Flash Year 1 brings a new story, Death of the Speed Force. And again, these titles probably getting a little ahead of themselves. But Captain Cold is taking the Lex Luthor offer here for this Year of the Villain tie-in. And Captain Cold, we know, is someone that Flash doesn't usually get along with. So Joshua Williamson's been tearing up this book with some great stories. So this looks like it will continue. We do have the new Bendis Superman issue coming out this week. And I guess the one thing that I am excited for in this book, if you look down in the bottom corner opposite of the UPC code, we do have a Legion of Superheroes logo. So apparently they're going to start working on bringing the Legion back. And we've seen Saturn Girl appear in Doomsday Clock. And early on in the New 52, we had some Legion stuff where they got stuck in the past, but all of that kind of fizzled out and went away, and not really sure what's supposed to be going on. So hopefully they're going to build some of that back up. But we're getting Rhaegar Zol here. I think that's how you pronounce it. The guy who apparently destroyed Krypton in a major retcon coming from Brian Michael Bendis. Not a big fan of this retcon, but this apparently is going to be the final fate, so it says, which is probably highly unlikely. Gideon Falls 16. This is going to be a good one. This is the end of this season 3 story arc, as they call it. This is the way they've been naming their books. They've been doing them in these chunks, and they call each chunk a season. And at the end of each season, you find out some big piece of information that maybe you're not really sure how it fits. But it's really cool of whatever happens. We got some big stuff happened in the last one. This is basically, if you were to take the idea of the multiverse that we see in DC and Marvel, but somehow work it into a horror story and make it really grounded, down to earth, but still a horrible horror story. This book does a fantastic job of telling that story. The artwork is fantastic. The story is fantastic. Gideon Falls has become one of my favorite books. It seems like pretty much every time it comes out, I get excited for it. There's only been one or two that have really made me feel like they were just kind of wasting time or spending too much time doing background stuff, but this should be pretty good. Road of Bones. This is a book that probably none of you have heard of, unless you've been listening to the Click Nation Comic Book Chronicles podcast, which I tend to be on occasionally on Thursday nights. Plug. You can check it out at theclicknation.com, KLIQ, click. Anyway, Road of Bones has been this fun story set in Russia during the reign of Stalin, where people escaping from the prison camp find themselves being chased by this legendary Russian demon thing, and they kind of turn into cannibals while they're on the run as well. So the question of who's going to live, who's going to die, how much more bloody is it going to get, and is this thing actually real? Is it making them turn into cannibals, or does it just happen to be there because the guys are going crazy? They've been tortured and brutalized in communist Russia. We'll have to see how that turns out. And the last one I want to talk about here is Roman Ritual. This is another one that you guys probably have never heard about, but this was one of the books that I really enjoyed when it came out. Volume 1, this is from Amigo Comics, and this book, it takes the idea of The Exorcist, so this idea of demonic possession and evil. I'm not Catholic. I'm not part of the Catholic Church, so this is not a plug for any of that. But the Roman Ritual, as the name is known, is what exorcism is. And so, again, this is really horrific. If you liked movies like The Exorcist, this is that type of thing. Really dark and gory and scary, but also it seems pretty realistic as far as these types of things go, whether or not you believe in it or whatever. But again, if you're a fan of horror, you're a fan of movies like The Exorcist, that's one to actually check out. Now, it does say here on the screen, in shops to be determined, but it is on the list for this month. Oh, Febmon, I just realized you're in the chat room here. I've been flipping back and forth between the screens. I wasn't paying any attention, but I see you here. Yes, The Mask. Well, The Mask, it's back. It's not back. It kind of is back. It's back more than less. I don't know. I think I'm going to reserve it for a few things. Maybe the Nerd News Desk will be the only time I use it. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not 100% sure. But one of the great things is 42 years old, I finally got contact lenses so I can wear it again, so I can see and I don't have to have the glasses stuck out, because that was, one of the things that really bothered me about trying to wear it before. Trying to be Joe Amato? No. I'm trying to use good technology, and I'm trying to be smart about stuff. Let's see. Sounds like maybe some sort of timeline or spatial distortion stuff is going on in DC. Yeah, well, DC has been having these problems with Doomsday Clock because it was supposed to be one of those crisis-like events that reshaped the timeline of the DC universe. You find out that Dr. Manhattan is behind the whole New 52 that happened in 2011 and all that kind of stuff. It was supposed to come out 12 issues in the span of a year. Now we're like 18 months into it because they keep missing deadlines and they keep having problems. Gary Frank has problems with the artwork, I guess, and this kind of stuff. And so all of this stuff that was supposed to tie into it and stuff happening at the end of Doomsday Clock just hasn't been happening. So it has messed up a lot of stuff, definitely. And we have heard comments from certain writers saying, like some of the stuff in Dark Knight's Metal, apparently Metal, when it ended and we got all those spin-off books like Silencer and Terrifics and Challengers of the Unknown and Immortals and all of that stuff, some of those were supposed to tie into the events from the end of Doomsday Clock, but Doomsday Clock didn't end yet. So it made those books kind of awkward. They didn't seem to make a lot of sense. And a lot of those, quite honestly, weren't very good. But yeah, it apparently caused some problems with those books as well. And some super deep subject matter in the last couple of comics. Yeah, I one of the things I like about comics is that you do have the ability to do a lot of different stuff. Now, superhero, fantastic stuff, of course, is, I think, where it shines the best. There have been eras where comics did a lot of romance, or they did westerns, stuff like that. And that has more to do with playing to the times that they were in. But I think comics in their best form are really good for, sci-fi, horror, superhero stuff. And of course, superheroes are what they're best known for. And so I like seeing some of this other stuff that can come through, especially when you can do things where, like Road of Bones, where it's set in the historical time period of the Stalin era of Russia. So you know how there's already like this film of how terrible it already is on top of it. And so it's kind of playing off of that, the way a good period piece in a movie would play out. So comics have the ability to, go from intensely funny to intensely horrific. Walking Dead, of course, one of the biggest comics of the last 20 years. So I do like to try different things, sample different things, look at how different genres are being played out. Gideon Falls is another one. It's, again, the multiverse with this horrific twist to it. Not like a Hellraiser type of horrific to it, but just like a good horror movie type of thing on there. So yeah, a lot of weird comics coming out this week. There's more this week that I'm actually kind of excited for than I was last week, which is good, because last week I think I bought like 3 whole comics for myself last week. It was pretty bad. So this one looks to be good again. So anyway, yeah, Nerd News Desk is something we're going to be trying out here and there. Again, like I said, randomly just popping up. It'll pop up live. So if you hit subscribe, you hit that little bell icon, then you'll know when a new video is coming. We're going to talk about some stuff, video games, toys, comics, movies, whatever. Something pops up, we're going to pop up and do a quick live stream. They may last 2 minutes. They may last 20 minutes. It just kind of depends on what's going on. Using history as a background gives a chance for people to look up the real events and see what was changed for the story. Yeah, if you're going to tie it in that close to history. Now, this one doesn't involve Stalin. So there's no actual historical figures being used to tell the story. It's in that time period, so it gives a sense of, where the characters are. There's things, there's no satellites, there's no cell phones, none of that stuff that they can rely on. These guys are taking off through the mountains and they're trying to survive. And if you're going to leave something like a prison camp, a re-education camp in Russia, you're not going to have a lot of supplies at hand. You're not going to have the best clothes for, trekking through the wilderness and across the mountains. You're not going to have good hiking boots and stuff like that. So, because a lot of these horror tropes that we're familiar with, especially from, growing up in the 80s and 90s, where you have a lot of the slasher flicks, a lot of the Friday the 13th and the Halloweens and Scream and all of that kind of stuff. Now we're in an era where we do have live streaming webcams. We do have CCTV all over the place. We have security cameras. We have cell phones. We have, always on internet access. So you have to have a way to break away from some of those things to introduce a new element of danger. And about the only way you can really do that in the modern era is by isolating people, taking them to a place where the phone doesn't work, or there's no electricity, so the battery goes dead, or the post-apocalyptic future. So going into the past is a good way to strip all that stuff away and make it more about the actual person. And when horror can find a way to use the technology in a way that works, that makes sense, that's kind of organic to the story, then they can make something work really well. Halloween Resurrection with Busta Rhymes, where they're all in the house with the live streaming. It was an interesting concept, but boy, did that fall apart hard. Really bad script, some bad acting, just kind of a terrible movie all the way around. So that is not the way to do it by incorporating them, but I will give them credit for at least trying in a movie like that. Classic Old Farm with the haunted house. Yeah, haunted house stuff works. Well, yeah, and we've seen a lot of that stuff too. A lot of the Conjuring and The Nun and some of that stuff where hauntings, ghosts, or technology is not going to stop ghosts, So that's one group that can always get away from that kind of stuff. So anyway, all right, that's going to do it. So apparently the stream worked. Apparently the sound is working. The camera is working. Looks like all the stuff is working. So I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad this experiment is paying off. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, Fedmon.